to a president, but it comes with very little power and absolutely no money. Much of the city's short-term inventory is owned by LLCs. Example, via LLC, Matt Cullen and Keith Cullen have 7 units currently listed as short-term rentals. They also recently purchased a single-family home at 20 Fair Street for $1 million. And while it's not currently on the registered list, it is being offered seasonally for $6,500 a month or $18,000 for the season, in case you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. For those interested in this issue, we do expect to have feedback on short-term rental enforcement by June 30 per resolution that I believe was put forth by Councilor Carlin. Additional? Okay, so quick overview for tonight. There are a lot of moving pieces to this council meeting. We expect it to be a long council meeting. So that being said, out of consideration to the substantial event that we have in town right now, and an item that I think a lot of you are here for this evening, so 2 separate items. I'd like to make a motion the council consider the following items next in the following order. Item 16, a resolution relating to the ocean race. Item 19, regarding the city's flag policy. And item 15, a resolution regarding Pride Month.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Item 16 is a resolution that I have sponsored. I am going to jump to the final 2 results. They relate to the ocean race. And so start discussion, I'll say, be it resolved that the City of Newport hereby welcomes the ocean race to Newport, our city by the sea, and wholeheartedly supports the recognition of the rights of nature, including the ocean's rights to exist, flourish, evolve, regenerate, recover, and to be restored within Newport, Rhode Island, and recognizes the rights of the people and communities to live in a clean and healthy environment. May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? Okay, so this is our opportunity for some brief public comments. What is going on here is the ocean race is pulled into town. 11th hour racing, our hometown team just took home a first place finish on this leg. So a tremendous outcome for us. And the race is more than just a race. The race is really focused on the concept of ocean health itself. This is really important to our community and the health of our community. And so with that, I believe that we have a guest who would like to briefly address the council on this matter. If you would, please approach and identify yourself for the record.
Mayor Say, council members, first, congratulations to well-deserved hometown victory today. 11th hour racing team, say no more. And congratulations. I am Johan Street. I am the Director of Ocean Policy and the Ocean Race Summits. I work for the ocean race and I report to the ocean. The ocean race is a sport, a competition. Sport is defined by clear rules. A referee ensures that the rules are followed. A defined field of play. Fair play, simple as that. Without fair play, no winner. The ocean race circumvents the planet. The teams experience the oceans as no others. Our sailors see firsthand the state of the ocean. Industrial fishing, garbage belts, declining wildlife. There is no fair play for the ocean. Lack of clear rules, no referee, no winner. The ocean race is a platform for fair play for the ocean, for ocean action, for ocean health, for the recognition of the inherent rights of the ocean. The ocean race is also a proud platform for change makers, creating positive results for the ocean. Business leaders, sport leaders, non-governmental organizations, such as the US-based Earth Law Center, who is the world leader in ocean rights and nature rights and a close partner to us. And to politicians like yourself. Today we have passed resolutions in support for our work, as we interpret it, for ocean rights, for the creation that we work on the global level of a universal declaration of ocean rights. Newport joined today a growing number of courageous cities, states, and countries all around the world in supporting the rights of the ocean and nature. For this, I salute you. Thank you for your support for the ocean and for ocean rights. Thank you for being the home of the leg-winning 11th hour racing team. And thank you for all that you will do for the ocean, adapting your policies and your operations to the needs of the ocean. May I say, thank you for standing up to this challenge. And finally, I do hope that we will see the ocean race returning many times to your beautiful home of sailing, Newport. Thank you, Council.
And so this resolution mirrors language that was passed yesterday at our State House in the House, and language that was enacted by mayors in some of the other cities that are serving as host ports, including Itajaí, Brazil, which recently sent the current leg up to Newport. Obviously with some good vibes since 11th hour 1. Any questions from the council on this item? Any comments? Any additional comments from the public? Hearing none, there's a motion. It's on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you so much and welcome to the City of Newport. And we understand if you guys need to be on your way. We know there's an awful lot going on right now with your own. Moving on to item number 19. This is a policy regarding the municipal flag display policy we talked about earlier. This is being put forth by the administration in response to a resolution passed by the council. Final resolve reads, be it resolved that the attachments to policy and flag display is hereby approved. May I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Okay. Brief comments on this to add some additional color. This policy mirrors the policy very closely that was enacted in the city of Boston in response to the U.S. Supreme Court ruling against them. Importantly, if you want to display a flag that is not a governmental flag in Newport, there are going to be two avenues to do that, either one through mayoral proclamation or two through a resolution of the council as a system to ensure that there is accessibility for the public's voice to be heard. Any additional comments on this item? Any members of the public who wish to speak on this item specifically? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. This takes us to item number 16. Councilor McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to read the resolve. So whereas the city of Newport is a vibrant, forward-looking, and welcoming city built upon a strong sense of place and cultural heritage, residents and visitors alike in the city for its rich history and community diversity and overall quality of life. We are committed to chartering a course for our future that embraces and encourages safety and inclusion for all. And whereas June has long been recognized as the LGBTQ Pride Month, in honor of the Stonewall riots, which took place in New York City in June 1969. During Pride Month, it is not uncommon to see rainbow colors being proudly displayed as symbols for the LGBTQ rights movement. And whereas the rainbow flag has long been a symbol of LGBTQIA+ rights and Pride Month, and the latest evolution of the flag is referred to as the Progress Pride Flag. And whereas the city of Newport, Rhode Island supports human rights, is determined to be welcoming and a safe space for all, celebrates diversity, and stands in staunch support for the LGBTQIA+ community. Therefore, be it resolved that the city of Newport officially recognizes June as Pride Month and instructs the city to raise the Progress Pride flag outside of City Hall every June and leave it there for the entire month of June. And be it further resolved, city officials shall publicly communicate the time and date when the pride flag shall be raised, as well as any and all times it has to be taken down, and for how long during the month of June. I move passage.
Second.
Comments or questions from the council before we start, Councilman McCallum?
I would just like to say, as a member, first woman from the LGBTQ+ community, as a council person, as an individual myself, I am very honored to be supporting this resolution tonight. I really want to thank our members, our community stakeholders, Newport Out, who is here, for really beginning something beautiful and wonderful, especially in recognition for our LGBTQ plus community.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions from the council? Are there any members of the audience who would like to speak on this item? Welcome, Daniel. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Cano. I live on 38 Grove Street. I serve as the executive director for the nonprofit Newport Pride. Our mission is to support the local LGBT community, so I just wanted to come publicly and thank you all for supporting this resolution, especially Angela and of the councilors who sponsored the resolution. And I believe that even though there's still many stronger things happening right now around the country that target especially transgender and gender non-conforming communities. This is a step forward to show that Newport is a progressive city, and it's not only going to benefit our community, but the surrounding communities as well, to show that Newport is that moving forward. So I just want to thank you all for approving that resolution.
Thank you, Danny. Any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion unanimously passes. This brings us back to our normally scheduled programming. Item 1.
This is, we are now at the public hearing for the proposed biennial operating budget 2024, 2025. Make a motion to open the public hearing to hear any testimony from the public about the proposed budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
We now are open for public hearing on items regarding the budget. Any members of the public who wish to discuss the budget that's been currently proposed?
Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Hearing is closed.
Make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilor Carl.
There was a motion to close the meeting. There was a second. We didn't take a vote.
Thank you. Okay, as noted, there's a motion to second post public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Thank you, Councilor Carlin.
Motion to approve the ordinance appropriating revenues on first reading.
Second.
So, quick discussion as to what's happening here. In order to pass a municipal budget, it takes 2 readings of the budget itself. The initial budget that's been proposed is proposed by the administration. That is in part represented by the individuals that are sitting at the table to my right, your left, over there. This is not the final version of the budget. At this point, the council will be rolling up their sleeves. We will be likely holding an additional workshop, specifically digging in on a couple sub-items of the budget, where we will be making additional adjustments and changes. After that point, there will be a second reading of the budget. This is the traditional passage of the budget as it is viewed. So that's the timeline we're working under. We've had a number of extensive public hearings already, going by department. We have not yet put our pen to the budget. This conversation we're having right now allows us for us to make some initial tweaks and changes, to ask some additional questions, but just procedurally, I hope that explains what it is that we're doing going through this process right now.
Mr. Chair, I would, before the council discusses, I would like to make a motion to accept 2 documents, the budget sheet, change sheet, and the civic support sheet as is. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh.
There's a motion. It's been seconded. Are there comments or questions?
This is just to accept those documents, that's all.
Just a motion to accept the receipt of the documents, not the discussion of the documents themselves. Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Seconded. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
It's time for council discussion. We can, the council discussion on items on budget change sheet, civic support, and other changes the council may want to make to the proposed budget.
And so again, this is just our initial cut and conversation around this. We'll be doing a workshop also digging in more on it, but there's some good initial questions I suspect the council has, and that's what we're going to start with this evening. Councilor McCalla.
Thank you. We received as a council, some budgetary changes to the budget, and I just want more clarification on this. Perhaps it's Laura I should be asking.
Laura Citron, Director of Finance.
Thank you. So for the first item under the general fund, there's a total allocation in terms of special election congressional seat. There's one budgeted item for $10,000 and the other for 20,000. Can you tell me what that money is for?
The canvassing seasonal and temporary is to hire the poll workers and staff the various polls for the special congressional election. The contract services is generally rental of the poll spaces, rental of equipment, and various other contracts that go along with running an election.
Okay, and then I was sort of confused in regards to the next two items down on the general fund. So to appoint a community liaison position, and then it seems like there seems to be a reduction in school contributions. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. One of the items that came up in the, back when the council set forth their goals for the year, I guess it was a goal setting workshop. We talked about a constituent services position, and that's what this position is. It's been renamed to community liaison. It would be somebody who I assume handles phone calls from the citizens on issues, day-to-day issues related to either parking or trash, or actually probably any type of issue that can come up. You guys probably have a better sense of what it is that you actually want the person to be doing. So we put in, this is salary and benefits. It's a placeholder for that position. So it's adding this position into the budget at a total salary and benefits of $105,000 for fiscal year 24.
Okay, before you go to the next item, because there is sort of a interrelated question. I just have a question because when we met as a council in terms of goal setting, I thought the original intention was really just to bring up the ideas and that there was no debate during the session and we didn't have further conversation. And I'm sort of confused as to how this liaison position came up. And like, if we didn't necessarily solidify the goal setting session was intended to essentially just get on the same page with formatting our ideas of how we envision our next 2 years as a council. It didn't necessarily mean that we wanted, or that was my understanding.
Yeah, of course, that's a perfectly good question, right? We have several different policy documents that we use ultimately to discuss what the policy priorities are for the city. We heard a couple tonight, those were resolutions. That's usually an expression of a sentiment or direction of the council. The second are ordinance changes. This is a bit more technical, obviously. It takes the form of law. And then the third is probably the most important policy document that we're considering, which is our budget. So I think putting it forth in the budget for conversation is in keeping with that spirit. It's certainly the type of thing where if it were an item that wanted to be discussed or voted on separately, we could do so. But that's why that's being included in the budget itself. Was something I think that we had discussed. If the council in its totality decides that we do not need assistance with constituent services or it's not a priority, we can vote on that. But that's why it's being put forth in this format.
So I do think that we need to talk a little bit more. And I also think as well, like, we don't even have like a structure for job duties. So like, we haven't had that robust discussion as of yet. And I'm sort of wondering if well, I guess I want to make a motion to table this budget until we have an actual workshop of this conversation and maybe revisit the salary at a later time. I'm sorry, table the, sorry, don't. This particular item.
I think that's when we think about the fact that we'll be holding a separate workshop to talk about individual nuances of the budget, to work through additions we might want and otherwise. This would be one of those things that's included as part of that in the totality. I think there could be some new things that we add into that conversation. There could be other items that we take away and change. And so that will be a broader, more robust conversation. If you would like to make that motion, we're happy to see if that motion has traction for a vote, or we can consider it in the working group session that we'll hopefully be having prior to the second reading. That's your decision.
I just don't have enough information at this point, so I'd like to move that we table this item first to have a discussion and then talk about then add this in when necessary, after we've sort of discussed this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? Let's take a roll call vote on this one. All those in favor of tabling the community liaison?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilor Carlin?
point of order.
Yes.
Did you ask for a roll call vote?
Yes.
Are we having a roll call vote?
That's my fault. I couldn't understand.
No, I'm so sorry.
Counselor.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Our clerk, Laura Swistak, does a wonderful job. I
Okay, so
apologize.
that's okay. So, Council Napolitano,
And this is to table the,
Community
would you
liaison.
restate your motion, please?
I make a motion to table the community liaison position for 105K for a later time in order to have further discussion first, and then we can talk about adding it to the budget.
Okay. I support.
Council Holder?
Aye.
Council Carlin?
No,
Mayor Camsavorlin?
No.
Council Segley? Council Rami? Council McCalla?
Yeah.
Nay.
Okay, well, okay, moving on. Can I?
Yeah,
continue?
of course.
Okay. Okay, in this budget, it looks like we're sort of taking away from the school. So it says reduce contribution 135, and it seems like the 30,000 plus the 105,000 for the community liaison position will be taken away from the school budget. Can you explain?
Yes, so when we finalized the budget on the city side in order to get it to the printer, at that point, we hadn't received the school's official budget request. So we had put 2.5% in at that point in time as an increase in the annual allocation that they get from the city. The school only requested 2%. So the 135 reduces the allocation by that extra 0.5% down to the 2%. So there's, if you put this through the way that it is, the school will still get a 2% increase in their annual allocation.
Okay, so there's no taking officially away from their current budget.
That's correct.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Please, I yield to Council McCall.
Okay, because we're doing this all in one shot, so to speak, the different subsections are being addressed. My next item really has to deal with the name change in terms of the elections administrator. I don't necessarily, I think what I understood, especially from the previous budget workshops about, I think our finance director did a great job in terms of explaining why we sort of need to bump and increase the salary, which sounded fine. But I'm also understanding that there's also mitigation that needs to happen regarding the Board of Canvassers, Board of Elections, in regards to the question of who is supposed to who actually has the power and authority to hire our canvassing clerk. And so I would ask, just to not further complicate things, that we keep the canvassing clerk name the same. And again, wait for the elections administrator, like at a later date, once the Board of Elections, Board of Canvassers have rendered a final decision.
I'd like to ask the solicitor and the city manager, is there, is this an open matter at this point in time? Also, I don't think this takes a motion, but can we open a window or get some air conditioning on in here?
Oh, you know, we bought the air conditioning.
Or even just open those back windows right there. They just twist right
Yeah, I
open.
think that's that thing is still locked.
Okay.
It's a problem with that
Mr. Nicholson is dealing with executive matters. Could you advise on this, solicitor?
Yes, so it is my opinion that the canvassing authority doesn't have any jurisdiction or authority to hire the personnel that we have in our canvassing department. They are separate employees of the city of Newport, and they are not employees of the canvassing authority. So the canvassing authority itself has, if they would like, has the authority to seek money from this council to hire clerks and technical and administrative assistant personnel, but they do not have the authority to hire or to participate in the hiring of the individuals who we identify in our canvassing department.
Is there, have you received any outreach from the Board of Elections that they are looking into this, that they are intending on, rendering an opinion on this at all?
No. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if that would change my opinion if they said something contrary to that opinion. These are personnel of the city of Newport. They are under the jurisdiction of the city manager. And at any time, this council, if it saw fit, could no longer fund our canvassing department and then fund the canvassing authority to be able to hire personnel of their own. Or you could give the canvassing authority the authority to participate in the hiring. That has not been done. And one of the quotes I saw, I believe in the paper is very true. We have 39 cities and towns, and all the communities do something different on this.
Councilman
But
Calhoun?
there's nothing uniform about it.
I just think that also too, like, the timing is weird, like, in terms of, like, who gets a position and then 2 weeks later gets a pay raise and a title bump?
It's not before. It is not favorites. This is revenue. Title change. It's a change in grade. There's some other change in grades. Then it's proposed budget. Change in grade, someone still needs to, there are lateral changes. You still need to demonstrate merit. And I can tell you right now, it's not merit under my watch, because I'll be gone. Someone else, a year from now, 6 months from now, we do the periodic.
Wait a minute, what are you saying? Are you leaving? You're welcome.
So to characterize it as equal opportunity, and we employ the best we can find, and we have the greatest workforce for land. There's no pay increases involved in this thing. I know some of them, it's hard to understand. We've had this discussion before. There's a simple change in grade we do on occasion is an ability to have some upward mobility for the employee. But when that happens, a year from now, 2 years from now, ain't gonna happen. I'll tell you right now, it could happen in December, because there needs to be a settling. There needs to be a settling time in which we can review, we can judge, we can determine performance. And when employees perform adequately and outstanding, then we consider some merit. Understand the word merit increases. So let's not take this out of context. This is some coincidence
something out of hand, change in rate. There's 8 other changes of rate in this budget. 8 others. 3/4 of them, there's no movement, they're simply laterals. We have a problem in the city with hiring an employee, you can't get them. We have a problem in the city with retention of employees. And that will continue, I guarantee you that. We need to drill down on all the grades and salary structures in this city. But there's nothing untoward happening here. And that's what I have to say.
And for those who might want more information on this, we actually had this discussion in a slightly more extended format in our budget workshop prior to this council meeting. And so that is recorded and available. And of course, we'll continue discussing this item. Councilor McCallum, do you have some additional questions or?
I just would like to make another motion. Again, I just think in terms of the title change, I just don't think it's good timing. And I think, you know, unfortunately, despite what administration says, this has been an issue and one that's.
It's a pride issue, but he doesn't. This is the council budget. This is no longer the administration. Council, they do what they wish.
I make a motion to keep canvassing clerk, the title of canvassing clerk.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? There's no second. The motion fails. Additional items at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Crowley.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Director Citron, members of the city administration, and to my colleagues, and thank you, Councilor McCullough, for your questions. I, again, as I've said many times in the past, do not wish to insult anybody's intelligence. I assume everybody knows, although we probably don't, about the budgeting process and about government in general as it relates to state budgets and city budgets and the process. Councilor McCall asked an excellent question earlier as to whether an increase or an additional position, if you will, the community liaison position would in effect take away money from the city or from the school department's requested budget. And as the Councilor McCullough received the answer, and the rest of us did, it's no. This is in effect the entire budget, as the manager just said, is a work in progress. It's our budget as a council. This is a placeholder in the classic sense. Nothing is being added or taken away tonight from what might be found in other parts of the budget. We take a pot of money that's available to us from a traditional funding standpoint, not from any kind of revenue which is restricted. But I do want to make sure that the public understands and that my colleagues understand, and I've said this 6 times already, starting in February, and this will be the 7th time tonight. I served on the school committee for 2 terms. I support our students, our families, our teachers, and our administration. The budget that you see in the change order tonight reduces what was a placeholder, I'll use that word again, or those words again, reduces the school contribution from the city to 2%. Which is what the school department asked for. And that 2% in and of itself is a placeholder until we vote on the final budget. The school department, by way of a 5-2 vote by the school committee, requested $583,000 in additional city support. That is to say, taxpayer money, City of Newport money from what we raise in taxes, directly contributed a 2% increase by, again, $583,000 from the last fiscal year, what the city contributed to the school department, which is non-special projects or special contribution money, just regular support of the school department. So they asked for a $583,000 increase, 2% over last year. The school department, the school committee also asked for $100,000 from a fund that we call OPEB, other post-employment benefits. Other post-employment benefits is a fund, thanks to, in part, Director Citron and the administration, which has steadily been rising for years. In the private market, when you have to pay your employees not only their retirement, but also their health insurance, you put a fund in place. And you build that fund up to ensure that you can meet those obligations when employees retire. OPEB is no place to take money from to fund a budget. OPEB is for retirees. It is also inappropriate, in my view, in this fiscal year, to give $583,000 to the school department when, according to the business manager of the school department, this Tuesday evening, no, is it this Tuesday? It was Monday evening, I'm sorry. And by any accord, you can look at their budget. If you study their budget, I've studied their budget many times. They have $5.46 million in reserves. $5.46 million in reserves, compliments of the federal government and all of us, the taxpayers, in the last 3 fiscal years, because in part of COVID. There's something called ESSER funds, ESSER, which is similar to ARPA funds, ARPA for the state and for the cities throughout the country. There is really no need for the Newport School Committee to come to the council and ask for $583,000 in taxpayer money and an additional $100,000 taken from the ARPA fund. And they're sitting on currently about 5.3+ million and an additional $486,000, according to their business manager, expected. They will have $6 million in reserves. There is no department in the city of Newport, and I consider the school committee of the school department a quasi-department of the city of Newport. The city of Newport, the city council would never allow Chief Donnelly or the fire department to sit on a $6 million surplus, or Director Riccio's Public Works Department to sit on a $6 million surplus. And when they came to us in those 2 departments or other departments and asked for hundreds of thousands of dollars in more funding, the appropriate answer by the council would be, take it out of this reserve that you already have, which you probably shouldn't have, but that you built up. And if you spent what was originally $10 million given by the federal government to the Newport School Department, if you've spent that, which they haven't, they have 5.5 left. But if you've made the determination, you're taking those dollars and spending it the way you want. Because after all, sooner or later, we're talking about real money here. And we can just print it if we need it. There's absolutely no way I will support giving $583,000 additional dollars of the taxpayers' money to the city, to the Newport School Department, nor will I ever support taking OPEB money for any other reason besides what it was designed for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
I just want to highlight one thing. So we indicated earlier, the council is still working through the budget itself. On the 22nd, I believe at Innovate Newport, we will be doing the school committee's budget presentation, which per the preview you just saw, should be a very lively meeting and would welcome any who would like to attend. Additional questions from the council?
Mr. Chair, I just want to make a statement that, as Councilor Carlin rightly explained, this is a placeholder for now. This is not the final vote on the budget and giving the school department 2%. So we have to have 2 readings on this. And in order to move this process forward, I believe that we need to vote as is. And then have our council, joint council school committee meeting on May 22nd in order for them to explain this surplus, in order to explain the need for this extra money.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Napolitano.
I have followed some of the information from the school committee, and yes, they have a $5.5 million reserve surplus. And it really galls me because we keep hearing about, building of Rogers, and I know we're gonna have to put extra money there. It's unfortunate, but it's necessary. These are our kids. And I just, they get another, what I found out, another $10 million in federal funds. We have what, the first or the second highest per pupil cost, and yet the performance isn't there. I'm really concerned. I'm looking forward to the meeting and some answers on the 22nd, because I'm having a real problem with this.
But you also have a briefing on the building itself.
On the 25th at Rogers, yes.
Additional comments or questions from the council? I'll raise one issue, one amendment I would like to propose. This other post-employment benefit fund that Councilor Carlin talked about, that I know many of you are probably very interested in, is really important because this is like the councilor alluded to, this is kind of like a pension plan. This is our retiree healthcare plan. It's very important that we reach full funding levels on that, so that we don't end up carrying this burden in the long term, so we don't have unfunded liabilities. It also impacts our bond rating, a number of other factors. Right now, we propose that at 80% of the recommended level, and then in the following year, we make it to 100%. I would like to propose that we raise that funding level to 100% for the upcoming fiscal year, and that we work with staff to identify the appropriate funding source and minimize the impact.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any comments or questions?
Well,
Yeah, I do. I know we have met with accountants in the past, with people in banking, and rarely have they said it should be 100% funded, that they derive some of the interest, some of the income off the reserves they already have. That is taking a really, really big financial step. I'd like to know more about that. I'd like to have, some sort of workshop or meeting with people that can advise us on that kind of step, rather than just go right to 100% funding.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Ms. Citron about.
Okay, so I believe if I'm interpreting the proposal correctly, it's the actuarially determined annual contribution that is going to be funded at about 80% in fiscal year 24, and then up to 100% in fiscal year 25. We were phasing it in over 2 years. This goes back to the fact that we transferred half the benefits in fiscal year 23, and we knew we were going to have to increase that funding. So it's not taking assets up to 100% of liabilities. It is simply saying that rather than delaying the extra 750,000 approximately in fiscal year 25, bringing that into fiscal year 24 instead.
So yeah, let me take a stab at this. So the city hires an actuary, mathematical expert, who reports to the investment commission, to determine what the appropriate contribution is per year. Correct?
That's
Right-
correct.
Right now, in the current proposed budget, we are saying, okay, professional actuary that says this is what we should do in order to someday reach 100% funding level, we're only going to do 80% of that. And so this is, at the end of the day, a black and white number. It's a recommended payment by the expert hired and paid for by the city to tell us what we should be making as a payment. And so the question before the council right now that I raise is, should we be listening to the professional actuary hired by the city to tell us what we should be paying into this fund in order to ensure it reaches the funding level? Any additional comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Nay?
Nay.
Thank you. Okay, any additional modifications to the budget as it's currently proposed for the first reading? Hearing none, I thank the council for this conversation. All those in favor? Sorry.
We need a motion to amend the ordinance appropriating revenues, per your amendment. Right, so we did that. So now we have to have a motion to approve the ordinance appropriating revenues as amended.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Motion to approve the personnel ordinance on first reading. Do I have a second?
Second,
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Do we need to vote on the personnel ordinance as
We
well?
just did that.
Okay.
We're good.
All right. Thank you all for bearing with us on this. Lynn, excellent job on the procedure, and
That's always a beast. So
Laura, thank you as well.
Thank you. Motion to approve the consent calendar in its entirety with the exception of 8K, L, A, and P.
second,
B1 and B1 as well.
B1, thank you.
The motion has been seconded. Are there any comments or questions from the council? Any members of the public who take issue with any of these items would like to speak on them? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving back to item B1.
Councilor McCall is recusing herself.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
So the Bike Newport Bike to Work Day, front lawn of City Hall, May 19th, 2023. Various events between 7 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. We already have a motion on the floor.
It's been seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Number 8 is the fireworks display. Mark Lewenstein, doing business as Wedding, 57 Village Road, August 19th, 2023, from 9 p.m. to 9:12 p.m. Motion to approve.
Second.
Been a motion. It's been seconded. I believe we need to make an amendment to
Yes,
this as well.
thank you very
I'd
much.
like to make motion to amend.
Yes, I'd like to motion to amend, to have 2 detail firefighters required, one for the tented wedding of 300 people and 1 firefighter specifically for the fireworks. No fireworks permitted if winds are 15 miles per hour or greater. Do I have a second on that amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
who is requesting this?
Mark Lewenstein?
I know who's requesting the fireworks.
Yeah.
Who's requesting those amendments?
I apologize, the fire marshal?
Is the fire marshal here tonight?
Our fire chief is here this evening. Huh?
I've never seen this type of request, this type of amendment added to a fireworks display request when I've been on the council. I'd like a thorough explanation.
I'm John Ruggiero. I'm the president of Ocean State Pyrotechnics.
Excuse me, John, I'm sorry. The chairman will run the meeting.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'd like to hear from the chief first on this. Chief, if you can just shed some light on this.
Good evening, Harp Donnelly, Chief of the City's Fire Department. On this particular event, they did make a couple of changes. Oftentimes we have fireworks displays and the fireworks displays take place on a barge, where there's not a problem making sure there's a proper distance away from where the fireworks are going and any of the possible exposures. This one's on a piece of property, the house and some cars being parked. A lot of thought went into how it could be done safely. And the company that's putting on the display worked with the fire marshal and they made some compromises. Compromises in the form of making it a little more safer event. The code's very safe, but we're kind of tightening it in a little bit, making even a couple of additional changes. One in particular was the wind threshold. The code allows for a 20-mile-an-hour wind. On this particular event, we've lowered it to 15 miles an hour. Anything over 15 miles an hour that night, they won't be able to run the fireworks. There were considerations regarding parking spacing and where the building is. The property is large enough to provide a safe zone to have the fireworks be displayed from. There's this particular display, the shells are less than 2 inches. The distance from exposures to the the sites where they're ignited is dependent upon the size of the shells. This particular night, the shells, the display has to be 150 feet away from the nearest exposure. Here, they made arrangements to have it under 75 feet. So all of the changes the little tweaking that was done were steps made to make the event a little bit more safer.
Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, thank you very much for that explanation. A couple of questions. This council has approved 5 fireworks displays from January 1st of 2023 to the present. I haven't, there has not been an amendment which requires a detailed firefighter in any of those past fireworks displays. Can you please explain to me why that is?
Sure.
Why this necessitates a detailed firefighter?
Absolutely. Because the other ones were most likely on barges. So it's a contained event away from any exposures. This particular one's on land. We typically would have a detailed firefighter, say for the 4th of July, if the fireworks were taking place off of Fort Adams, we would have a detailed firefighter there. So this particular event, there's, as Councilperson Segley pointed out, there's 2 detailed firefighter schedule, one for inside the tent protection, and the other one specifically for the fireworks. So this is not uncommon to have a fire detail for the fireworks display on land.
Thank you, Chief. So none of the previous fireworks displays which the council approved this year, to your knowledge, involve a tent?
2 separate reasons for a detail. There's one detail specifically for the fireworks. If the tent wasn't there, we would still have a detailed person there for the fireworks on the property that it's being displayed from. The fact that there's a tent there for the wedding requires an additional detailed person to make sure the people inside the tent are safe.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome. Do you want additional questions from the actual company, or is that sufficient to address your concerns?
My concerns were not with the display itself. My concerns were that it appeared to me, until Chief Donnelly gave a very thorough explanation, that this fireworks display, which I fully support, was being approached in a different manner than the prior council approved displays. I'm thoroughly satisfied. Thank you.
Great.
Here we have a motion on the floor to amend this.
There's been a motion to amend. It's been seconded, correct? All those in favor of the amendment? Aye. Any opposed? The amendment passes.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
The motion's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
K, we have a banner application. I believe Councilor Holder is recusing banner application. It was the first time on Newport County to hang a banner promoting the Newport show from July 22nd to July 31st, 2023, between the Red Parrot and Midtown Oyster Bar. I move approval.
Second.
The motion's been seconded. Any comments or questions on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Mr. Chair, if you wouldn't mind, we could take on the P item also, because Mr. Holder is going to recuse from that as well. Is that-
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, the banner application, Newport Gulls Limited to hang a banner between the Red Parrot and Midtown Oyster Bar from May 26th through June 9th, 2023, promoting the Newport Gulls opening day. Request to waive the banner fees. This will be deferred to city administration. I move approval.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. MP passes.
Okay, next is LA Waste Hauler Licenses, A1 Roofing and Construction LLC, doing business as Sean Napolitano, 1133 West Main Road, Middletown, Rhode Island. Councilman Napolitano is recusing. I move approval.
Second.
The motion has been seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Okay. Okay, we are all set with the consent.
This brings us to licenses and permits, correct?
Yes, motion to approve a vittling license renewal, Lindsay Kusick, doing business as Gooseberry Concessions and Grill, Ocean Avenue. I move approval.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried.
Motion to approve the billing license, new Luke's Lobster LLC, doing business as Luke's Lobster, 36 Bowman's Wharf. Motion for.
Second.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, so now we move into an interesting subject area. Pedicab license applications. And so the dilemma that we face is that we have a number of applicants that exceed the number of licenses that we have before us this evening. And so before we dive into the consideration of each individual request, would like to start by asking that our city clerk, if you would, just shed a little bit of light on what's going on with these requests, specifically, if there's any specific insight you have.
Sure. So there were 6 licenses, that were remitted, which means that there are 6 available. So there was, social media push that, requested applicants, to file, I believe it was beginning Friday, April 14th. On that day, I received 2 applications at 8:30 when we opened. Then I received another application later in the day that was in our Dropbox. And then proceeded to receive 3 more applications. I can tell you, I've been working with the pedicabs since they were established. I think that was in 2007. It's a tight-knit group, but the licenses are competitive because we're capped at 18.
Which of these applicants are repeat?
That would be James Brown has 2 and Justin Richardson has 2.
I'm sorry, what is the second one that has 2? It's,
Justin Richardson.
I'm sorry, which is that number 6?
That's number 9.
9. Okay.
okay, thank you.
Councilor McCallum?
Thank you.
That's actually.
I have a question for the city solicitor. Well, yeah, the city clerk. One, is this in the order of in which it was received? And 2, so we're obviously in a quandary here where there's so many pedicabs that are allowable in the city of Newport. And it sort of becomes a question of equity in that sense, to me, anyway. It's like, okay, my initial reaction is how many, pedicabs do we actually initiate knowing that there's a finite cycle? But first I need to know legally, can we regulate how many pedicabs we can say? Like,
Yeah,
Are we legally able to put a cap on the number of pedicab licenses?
Thank you.
we do, the ordinance provides that, I think, how many are there, Laura? 18. So
There are 2 companies that have 6, and another company has 6. Oh, no, sorry. One has 6. Then we have these 6 available, and the other 6 are divided between a few different applicants, if you will. There are a handful that have only 1, some have 2.
Do any of these applicants already have pedicab licenses? Or
Yes.
all brand new?
James Brown and Justin Richardson. So that's applicant number 9.
And they're the 2 that already have 6, so they're asking for.
They each have 2.
Okay.
So when on number 9, it says 1 pedicab valid. So they actually have this, Justin Richardson actually has 2.
He has 2 now, so if he was to get another one, he'd have 3. That's all he's asking for. He's already been approved for the other 2. Yes,
So he has 2 other licenses. He's requesting 1 additional license.
yes,
Okay, and for number 5, Mr. Brown, these are just the 2 licenses he has. He has no licenses above and beyond.
he just has 2 and he's requesting an additional 1. Or he's requesting 2.
Okay. So this is the entirety. He'll have 2 in the fleet.
Mhm.
Okay.
But Jeremy Critter is requesting 4. Critter.
Are we able to hear from the applicants one by one before having them officially, do we have to have a motion and a second for consideration and hear from them? Or can we hear from them and then make a determination after.
I think, because of the nature of what's before the council. What you may want to find out is if all 5 applicants are here. If
Well,
one of the applicants isn't here, then
sure. So we're gonna briefly call the name of your business, and if you are here, just raise your hand and we'll start with that, and then we'll proceed from there. So,
James Brown, it's James,
James. Next,
Remy Critter,
Remy.
Nicholas Leambach,
Thank you.
David Ogilvy, and Justin Richardson.
All right. Thank you all for coming in. We appreciate you taking the time. We're going to give each of you a minute, or technically 3 minutes to briefly speak on your business if you'd like, kind of render your case and give us a moment. So we'll start with Mr. Brown. Hi. Thanks for coming back.
So we knew that the permits had become available, and we came in to apply, Remy and I, Remy Critter, and were turned away, because the city clerk wanted to decide what to do with the permits. And she thought it would be fair to advertise it on social media, and whatnot. So we left, and I watched for those advertisements, and it said Friday, April 14th as a first come, first serve basis. So we came down at 8:30 in the morning when they opened, and our applications were accepted. We were here 2 weeks ago, and then it was continued. So I was hoping that the council would honor the original process that was outlined in the public notice as first come, first serve.
So, and I'm sorry, I know we asked this before, is answered. Are the applications listed in the item and in the order in which they were received?
Yes.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, and you have been operating, you operated last season, so that you're coming back, hoping to continue.
I've been involved with pedicabs in Newport for 10 years, and I've been independent this will be my 5th year.
Thank you, appreciate
And
it.
how many do you have total?
Currently 2.
Two, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, just a question for the administration. Could you verify that our advertisement for these permits was advertised as first come, first served?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
and that's,
Chair,
yes, Council Holder.
one more question for the city clerk. On the 3rd application, Limbach, they're dated 5/31/22. So they applied last year?
Yes, he did. And there were no cabs available at that time. So his application was resubmitted on the 14th in our Dropbox after hours. I received it Monday morning.
Okay,
and just, there is kind of an unwritten policy we followed in the past, when we would have requests for a license, limited licenses, and they showed up on the same docket. We would first come, first serve, whoever was on the docket, who filed first was on the docket first. So it's just been a past practice of ours. It's not in the ordinance or anything of that nature, but because it had priority based on a docket location.
okay. It's helpful. Remy, Critter?
Yes.
Hi, Remy.
Yeah, my name is Remy Critter. I'm applying under the DBA Pioneer Pedicab. I've been involved with the pedicab scene since 2017. I'm a young entrepreneur. I'm looking to obtain 4 licenses to start up my own business. My father owned his own business for almost 20 years, and I'm looking to follow in his footsteps. And I'm honored to be able to speak in front of you today with the possibility of being able to start my own business.
Remy, quick question for you. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. 4 licenses, first time out of the gate. would you be profitable without 4 pedicabs here? Would you be able to run an enterprise with an initial pedicab if that was a license?
Yes, I already own the pedicabs. I own storage. I have several experienced riders that are available and are, reluctant to be able to ride for me. They wrote in some letters. I don't know if your council had the chance to read them, but basically speaking upon my character and how they've known me for, X amount of years and how I'd be a great person to be able to obtain these licenses successfully, follow the code, follow the ordinance. I've already obtained the insurance, which is required, stated in chapter 5.97.040, which clearly states that you need to obtain a liability insurance, $1 million per coverage per cab when you submit your application. So I followed the ordinance to a T, and I'm very confident that I'll be able to manage, my riders, my passengers, and the whole pedicab system.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
All right, I have a thought in
Yeah.
terms of, again, first come, first served sort of policy for us as a decision maker. I also know that this is a similar situation that we ran in regarding mobile food trucks. We know that there are certain businesses that we allow that have multiple pieces, mobile food and establishments. And I almost think like we should probably just vote on first come, first serve. And if the clerk is sort of affirming,
Mr. Chair,
Councilor Romley?
sidebar issue, but related. I love pedicabs. My kids love pedicabs. The tourists love pedicabs. Is there a reason why we should stay limited to 18 licenses in the city?
idea, Councilman.
Yes. There's a member from the public who'd like to speak on this. If you could identify yourself. Yeah.
Hello, council. My name's Andrew Crone. I own Petty Power Pedicabs. We are the holder of 6 pedicab licenses here in the town. I'd like to just shed some light on how pedicabs operate. That might give you guys a little bit of indication on a solution that might fit for everybody. Pedicabs are rented from us to independent contractors that receive licenses. These pedicabs go out on a per shift basis. We have a day shift and we have a night shift. Not all of these pedicabs are out at the same time, with the exception of the big events. So even if there are 18 pedicab licenses, 18 pedicabs are very rarely going to be out on a weeknight, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. The capacity of the town is not there all the time. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, there might be 18 pedicabs. 4th of July, big holidays, the Tennis Hall of Fame, all those events, there may be 18 pedicabs on the road. Issuing more pedicabs doesn't mean that more pedicabs are necessarily on the road at the same time. That's all I have to say.
So the market could bear additional pedicab licenses without being detrimental to current operators.
The operators, maybe not. The businesses, subjectively, yes.
Okay.
Because we lease the bikes. The supply sometimes outweighs the demand, but that's only sometimes. It's one of those tough situations that we face as a seasonal business and with events, right? So Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we might all go out, but people will go home. People will leave. There's not enough to accommodate the riders.
I appreciate that. Thanks for your insight. Mr. Nicholson, I saw you dive into the button. Yeah, which will put us too deep into the season for these operators. All right, so We have, yes, that's a good idea. Counselor Segley has recommended that we have a vote of the council to determine an initial gating issue of whether we should be handling these permits on a first come, first served basis, or whether we should be considering the individual merits of those who were applied.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to agree with Councilor McCall and also Councilor Saban. I think that's the best way to go about it. We put it out that it's first come, first serve, and for us to turn back on that now is disingenuous at least.
But sorry.
Councilor McCallum.
I do think that this is a worthy discussion. It doesn't stop here tonight. I do think that, so whether Councilor Romley's talking about, should we be talking about the expansion? Expansion in more pedicabs? Are there routes that are probably, could we look at? Are there new policy decisions? I didn't mean for tonight, but I mean, I don't know enough of information and data, but leaning in on what is on the ordinance specifically tonight, I just think.
But basically, we have to act based on the ordinance that we have.
That's right, tonight, and I do think that this needs to have more of a further discussion, because I do think in terms of equity too, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, although this is the ordinance, from an equity position too, like, I don't believe also too, that everybody has to be concentrating certain things. Certain forms of concentration of wealth happen in certain different ways. And in terms of equity, like, what's fair? What's fair in terms of the new entrepreneur that just wants to come? How many more can we think about of new people who want to come in, come to the game and have the opportunity to be able to do so?
Yeah, so that's the question also. We saw this with food trucks. If one entity comes in and requests the entirety of available licenses, should we be solely allocating them to that singular entity? That's obviously not the entirety of the case here, but I mean, that is the issue we deal with the first come, first serve. And also, to what extent do we bear the burden of appropriately advertising and informing the community that that's becoming available, right? Do you have to essentially be in the know in order to hit that jump ball when it comes up? And, does that benefit certain portions of our population or of the business community? So I think these are valid considerations. There's been a motion. It has been seconded. We are now, right? It has been seconded, Carolyn?
It has been.
So, sir, please, I know your hand raised. Would you like to?
Mr. Chairman, may I first, please?
Yes, Councilor Carlin.
Indulge me for a moment, business owners and riders. Can I just have a show of hand from those who are in the audience? Either owners or drivers who have 6 licenses. Owners or drivers who have 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Of all those license holders and riders, raise your hand if you're a Newport resident. Riders too.
Seasonal.
And forgive me for asking this as an open audience question. The young lady, how many, as either a rider or owner, how many pedicabs? How many pedicabs does your employer, or I know you're independent contractors, how many licenses does the pedicab owner have?
Since 2016, I rode for the company that is involved. So I rode for David Cass, and he's the one who just really relinquished the license. So.
May I ask you to pause for 1 moment? I apologize. I'm sorry, Ms. Manager. I'm sorry.
We're live streaming, so if people are.
That's right.
Audience,
That's absolutely right. And that, I don't want to extend this any further. I think I've gotten my answers. There's effectively 3 of you, 2 for sure, that are Newport residents, either riding or owning. One of whom I know. Thank you very much.
Sir, if you could.
My name is David Ogilvy. I'm from Pawtucket. I came to Newport in 2017 for like the first time ever. And I rode pedicabs, and I've been here seasonally ever since. I am applying for one permit for a pedicab license today. And I totally understand the ordinance and the view of the council. I think the issue that rose mainly as we were kind of handing in our applications was that we were under the impression that pedicab permits were non-transferable. And which is why the reason that David Cass, after having his pedicab company for years and years and years, chose to dissolve. Because he does not own the permits, he cannot really sell the business. So without the permits, effectively, those pedicabs and any of the advertising deals that he would have had set up over the years that he had built with his company are basically, not really valuable. And unfortunately, in this part of the country, a lot of the markets in pedicabbing are capped. I started pedicabbing here in Newport. Most recently, I was the manager for pedicab safety and inspection at the Coachella Music Festival just several weeks ago. So most of the markets here in New England are capped. And unfortunately, because of that, it creates this competition for licenses. And just as James Brown stated earlier, he had come to the clerk's offices with their applications, but returned away because she wanted to be able to advertise it. And the thing is that Remy made a deal with David Cass to purchase his bicycles, which in turn kind of gives him like a somewhat of a heads up on kind of the behind the scenes of how the permitings were going to be relinquished, the timeframes, when those things were going to be done. Realistically, it's like the public doesn't have that knowledge, like guys like myself, and I'm only privy to knowledge like that because, as we talked about earlier, we're a very small knit community here in the pedicab industry, very, very tiny. So I think that was really the cause of concern and why we had gotten our licenses, our applications in basically as soon as possible. But that's the other reason why is, unfortunately, in this industry, sometimes you'll have somebody who has a leg up, especially when you're dealing with money, So it's my personal view that had I decided to purchase a bicycle from David Cass, I would probably not be having this discussion right now. I probably would have a permit for a pedicab license. However, I already own my own bicycle. So for me to do so would not have made sense. And like I said, I've been here seasonally for several years now. I, believe it or not, worked at the nursing department at Memorial Hospital before they closed. And now I full-time pedicab, who would have thought. Basically, I've helped all these guys somewhat manage and maintain these pedicab companies for the past several years. I also manage a company in Boston in the meantime. And honestly, in my personal opinion, I understand the cap. I get it. I just would like the opportunity to actually have something and work for something for my own, rather than have to work for sometimes in certain situations for somebody who hasn't ridden a pedicab in a very long time and doesn't even live here. So that was my issue as far as the permitting and basically the transfer of permits, is that's my understanding.
Appreciate your time.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Council Holder.
Just to go back on the maybe taking this first come first serve, I'd like us to keep in mind that we do have two applicants that were continued from our last meeting. Whereas if we had voted on the last meeting, we probably wouldn't be in this situation we're in right now.
Excuse me?
Mr. Brown, and Mr. Kidder that were continued.
Okay.
From the 26th or
I believe, sir, that continuance was because of the information that the other pedicabbers had found out and brought
at that time, so.
Right, I think the continuation was because we had brought that information to the clerk.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Laura, forgive me if I can't remember this, but does the
Thank you.
ordinance state that these would be advertised every year? That slots?
So it became available?
No, that the city would actually advertise every year for new,
No, I don't believe it says that. It just indicates how you go about assigning new ones when some have been relinquished.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor.
thank you. Quickly, if I could, and I'll report the results to those who are streaming and can't see the people, but may I ask again, please, not a repeat question, but the motion on the floor is to effectively honor the first come, first serve. It's been moved and seconded. Can you, in the audience, those owners and riders, can you raise your hand if you think that that is a fair motion? 2 riders, 3 riders or owners think it's a fair motion. Can you raise your hand if you think it's an unfair motion? 5 riders or owners think it's unfair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So polling is not going to be part of our regular procedure, but I think we're trying to, look, so far as I can understand, right? What happened here is you had somebody who held a half a dozen licenses. Many of you probably rode for that individual in some capacity. And that individual, obviously decided to exit the business. He sold a number of his assets to some of you sitting in this room this evening. And so we are now in a position to make determination as to where those licenses go. You have a number of you who have requested either 2 or 1 licenses, one operator who requested 4 licenses. The motion before the council at this immediate moment is whether or not we should be considering these in the order which they were accepted, which is what the ordinance calls for. This council has brought forth, and we have heard there are some, look, you guys are running small businesses. It's really hard, right? And you're not, these are very straightforward businesses, and it's very hard to make it work. And so we understand that this is not a business in which you probably are employing a lobbyist or a lawyer or somebody to look out for you, and we appreciate that very much. And so I think we're just trying to make the best decision possible on this matter.
I have one question. if you don't mind. If, let's say, we have a discussion about increasing the number of licenses. And of course, we have to go through 2 readings, and of course, that's going to take time. I understand that. Would these next applicants be first in line? Is that possible?
Does expansion?
No, I mean, I think if we were gonna make changes such as opening it up from 18, we would probably look at changing this process to maybe to one such as a lottery when positions became open. So someone quick at the draw at 8:30 in the morning doesn't necessarily get 4 available ones. So we'd have to clean up. I think the only problem is looking at a change in the ordinance is that unless the council just wanted the one change from 18 to another number, we would probably look at updating it and making the whole process a little fairer and
Mr. Chair,
just.
I'd like to call the vote.
Okay. Got a motion on the floor, question, that's seconded. All those in favor of the motion, consider first.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're going to show hands, please, on this vote.
We will.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on sort of the definition of first come, first serve.
Yeah.
Is it first come, first serve, as in we approve in the order these applications will receive the entire quantity we're requesting, or just that we are evaluating these individual applications and have discretion as council to determine how many licenses to award in the order of applications?
Interesting question. Solicitor.
I would say you would have discretion on the numbers that are requested.
Okay.
But perhaps the first come, first serve should be adhered to.
So if we handle it accordingly, right? And we just addressed each request in the order in which it was received, and we had latitude. Would we still be in compliance with the ordinance itself?
I would say so, yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. Let's start with item number 5, pedicab license, James Brown. We heard from Mr. Brown earlier. He appeared at the prior council meeting with his request for this license. He's now requesting 2. He is a repeat operator of pedicabs in the city of Newport in good standing. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion to
Oh,
approve.
motion. Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to item number 6, we have a request for 4 licenses from Remy Critter. We heard from Mr. Critter earlier this evening. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, we're in discussion. Councilor Ron.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to reduce the quantity awarded in this application to 2.
Amending, seeking to amend the motion that was just seconded to approve.
I don't know the procedure.
Yep,
I want us to vote on approving 2.
Yeah, there's a motion to reduce the applicant's number of
Okay.
licenses. That will still, at the end of the day, leave us 1 shy of the total allocation, but that being understood, there's a motion, it's been seconded. Mr. Critter, I see your hand.
Yes. I would just like to say I am willing to amend my application from 4 to 3 pedicab decals in the sake of making this issue, quicker to resolve for everybody and assisting parties that may have applied after us, even though we did apply on a first come, first served basis. As someone who followed the ordinance to its T, I spent $8,000 out of pocket for a non-refundable insurance policy that is required at the time of application. It specifically states in chapter 5.97040, section 7, at the time of application, insurance policy of $1 million per occurrence of liability coverage is required, which I spent prior to even applying. Granted, I took a risk doing this, but by knocking my number down to 2, I am taking a $4,000 hit and diminishing potential revenues in the future if these licenses were approved. As a young entrepreneur that doesn't have much income right now, I'm a recent college grad, that would significantly hurt my financial standpoint. And although I am willing to compromise, I'm not willing to compromise to that degree.
So what we're hearing is that if you don't get at least 3 licenses, then you are going to walk away from the license.
No, I'm not saying that. If 2 is the only way this will work, it's just from my standpoint, this is, influencing my, not only potential revenue, but the money I've invested so far into this.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Councilor.
Question for the city solicitor. The way the ordinance is written, and I've heard this a few times, that the applicants have to get an insurance policy before they're assured of even getting a license. That seems backwards to me. Is that a flaw in our ordinance by putting folks at risk for financial investment?
All I can tell you, I haven't heard it be an impediment up to this point. This is the newest. I mean, most of the time you would contact the insurance company, get a binder, and then the policy would follow. But I don't deny what the gentleman is saying by any means, but
Right. So if I think about insurance policies, this is really a statement that to the city that this business is insurable, right? That you're a business in good standing, that the insurance company believes you are insurable. But also, as I think about my own house insurance, I can cancel at any time. And I just pay a prorated amount for the amount of time that it's been in place, and I get my money back. Is that not the case?
That is not the case, unfortunately. It's non-refundable. They make that very clear before you submit your payment, because there has been issues in the past where people apply for insurance, submit it to the city, and then cancel their policy and then operate without insurance throughout the year.
Meaning your insurance company took a payment and told you this will be non-refundable for the term that your coverage is for those pedicabs.
Correct.
That's unusual. Yeah. Thank you for that information.
Yes.
Gentlemen, just last comments.
Luke Brown here on behalf of Nick Lineback, POA for Rhode Island, RI Pedicab. I just wanted to weigh in on the first come, first served basis. as it was mentioned, that our company put in an application last year. So how does that come into effect here? Because ours was received just after Remy's, from my understanding, this year. But he had previously put in an application last year. Thank you.
Hello, Justin Richardson. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I've been also, I've been part of the close-knit community, and I've been pedicabbing for like 9 years. And I was like, started off in Newport pedicab, and then became manager. And then when they dispersed, I bought like the website, and I bought the bikes, but I didn't like use the bikes to like put down for my application. I had like 2 bikes of my own. And just like as far as like the insurance goes, like it's like kind of like well known that you have to buy the insurance ahead of time. And like I have like in the past like put applications in and bought the insurance and spent like that roughly that much money, maybe more, and like just like understood that at the end of it that it was like a risk that I took, and that like they are non-refundable. And just like I'm like also just like agree with Dave, where it's like just like the way the permits were transferred, and like the personal contacts that like David Cat, the previous owner, and the people who like put the applications in first had. It's like I just felt like and like the bikes too that were purchased and sold. It's like I just felt like that violates like the ordinance of like transferring the permits. And like I knew like I put an application in when like a year ago when I thought David Cass was gonna put his bikes in. I had like 6 of my own bikes like that were like somewhere else that had insurance on them already, and like that's what I put down on the application. And I am basically a father of 3. Like the pedicabbing is my main income. I was really unaware of this because it's like I was on a work trip for March and April, all of March and all of April, a pedicab trip. And I just felt like I wasn't there, and the timing wasn't. And it's like I just having no control over the timing, and like I just felt like it was just like unfair.
Could you clarify how many do you have now with this?
So I have 2 permits, right? But I own 3 pedicabs, and I've had insurance on the 3 pedicabs for like years. And like when one breaks down, like put out a different permit on it. I'll put the permit off that to have like the 3 insured pedicabs that are on my application.
You're confirming that in your case as well, in order to obtain insurance, you had to buy the policy in advance, and it was non-refundable.
Yeah, it's like when I bought the policy, and I figured out very quickly that like I wasn't gonna get that. I wasn't gonna be able to get the permits. I called like the next day, and I got it was like 20% back, and I like really had to like complain about that to get that part back. And
Mr. Chair, I'd like to continue. So I've heard some new information tonight. I'm a business person. I own a business, and there's nothing worse for a business owner than when government screws with you. What I'm hearing and what I'm seeing here is that the city doesn't have a perfect process. That's not your fault. I don't think that's the city's fault. We probably haven't run into this situation in quite a long time. But clearly, when business owners have to put money at risk, and there's a moving goalpost depending on a government decision, and possibly a somewhat ambiguous municipal government process, I don't like that. And I feel for you guys. This is not a good situation for you. I think certainly I've changed my opinion on a number of things after hearing some of these facts. So I'm going to change my earlier statement, Mr. Chair. I do believe that we should be sticking to the intent of the ordinance, which is the first come, first serve. So I do withdraw my request for us to consider a reduced number of licenses. But at the same time, I would like this council to take a second look at this ordinance. It's messy, and I'd like the council to give some indication to some of these folks on whether or not we'd consider, with the input of the police department, adding additional licenses so that we can satisfy what the demand is. I can tell you that that would be my vote.
Hi, I just wanted to, my name's Alex DaCosta. I work for New England Pedicab under James Brown. I just wanted to say a few things about some things that were set up here. I've heard people say that Dave Cass sold his business to Remy Critter. Dave Cass notified his riders that he was not going to operate because we rely on this money in the summer. So he notified his riders that he was not going to operate. Remy, I know Remy, he's out there 7 days a week, making money until he got sick. I knew as soon as I heard they were dissolving that, oh, Remy's gonna try to get those pedicabs. So I'm just wanted to clarify that Dave Cass did not sell or tell us in advance. He just simply notified his riders that he was not going to be running this year. As well as I wanna talk on the additional licenses. I do football games, the Penn State games, Pittsburgh Steelers games. At those games, there's 30 cabs there, 20, 30. People are sitting around all day. We drive down there. Sometimes it's not worth the money. If you guys are downtown in Newport on a Saturday night, I'm sure you see 4 cabs at Bannisters, 3 across the street. I think if we add licenses to this city, the owners are gonna get their rent. They get their rent. For the most part, they lower it if we have a bad night. The riders are going to suffer if we add more licenses. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, we, at this point in time, have a motion to approve the license for Pioneer Pedicab. It has been seconded. Are there any additional comments or questions? Okay, my final comment is that I think this process sucks. And so we have a complete options choice in front of us right now. I don't like how this reflects for the process with other licenses in the future. In that, you have parties that are playing by the rules, that are trying to do the right thing. That's really all the parties that are here tonight. And those that happen to be particularly in the know on this particular issue of what's going on in the city have the advantage given to them. That being said, this is the ordinance. We will be taking a second look at the ordinance. That'll be the reason why I'm ultimately voting no on this, is because I don't agree with the structure of the ordinance, not because I don't support any of you in your license request. It's been a motion. It's been seconded.
Motion, can you?
There's been a motion to approve the request of Pioneer Cab for 4 licenses.
I'm sorry? Pioneer Cab?
Yep, item number 6.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
understood, sorry.
It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Motion is carried.
Okay, Vittling license expansion, Mooring LTD, doing business as Smokehouse, 30.
I think you have to act on those applications.
What do I have to do? I have to table?
On the rest of the pedicab applications, you need to act on them, something.
I'd like to entertain a motion to table items 7, 8, and 9.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions?
Yeah, well, so if we table these, what are we doing with them?
That means they're nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, so.
They sit in limbo until such point as we either expand the number of licenses or determine not to, at which point their request
So if
expires at
we
the end of the
decide
year.
to expand the number of licenses, are we going to be back in the same situation where they better be here at the crack of dawn when the clerk office opens and file their applications, or are we going to have something
Well, I think
different? 'Cause
yeah,
if they've been, this is the same situation with the first 2 that we just okayed. They were here 2 weeks ago and we decided to continue.
I think that we need to change the process, whether it's a lottery or some other thing. I think that's what the solicitor said, that we need to look at the entire process and perhaps the number of cabs. But for now, we have to operate under the ordinance that exists.
Exactly.
Yeah, and, oh.
Yes,
Mr.
Councilor McCallum?
Fritz, sorry. At this point, we don't need to table it. We can just, it's gotta be a no for 7, 8, and 9 as part of the ordinance. Like, we're not, and when the new ordinance comes through, they can be open to apply again.
Who made the original motion on this one? Was it me?
Yeah.
It was you.
Yeah, I withdraw my motion.
All right. Okay, motion to approve pedicab business license, new Nicholas Leanbaugh.
No.
Doing,
Oh, I see, got it.
doing business as Rhode Island Pedicab. I move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Moving on to item number 8.
Motion to approve David Ogilvy doing business as Ocean State Pedal Tour Company, 17 Hanover Street, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor? Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Aye. Motion carried. Moving on to item number 9.
Motion to approve pedicab business license, new Justin Richardson doing business as Newport Pedicab, 46 Barber Avenue, Warwick, Rhode Island. Do I have a second? Second.
Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried.
That was painful.
Kind of felt like we were spinning our wheels, huh?
Yeah.
Mr.
Sort
Chair?
of like that, yeah.
Mr. Chair, does, may I
Yeah,
have one
Councilor
comment on
Conley,
this? I just want to close this out. Some of you got lucky tonight and some of you didn't. That's not fair. It's not a fair process. I personally, after experiencing and hearing from everybody here, I feel badly as a representative of Newport City Council that we couldn't do better on this round. I think you have my promise and probably the promise of my peers. The next time around, we'll get this right.
Okay, motion to approve Vittling License Expansion Mooring LTD doing business as Smokehouse, 31 Scotts Wharf to expand the licensed premises to include a 38 by 46-foot outdoor seating area consisting of 10 tables and 80 seats. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. On this, can we get some additional explanation as to what's going on at the Smokehouse?
I think Mr. Scott's here on behalf of the applicant, but do you need anything?
We'll start with Mr. Scott. Welcome, Turner.
Mr. Mayor, Turner Scott representing Newport Restaurant Group. This is the VIT license. Later on, you have the expansion of the liquor license. I don't know if you want to entertain those both at the same time or one and then the other. It's up to the council, certainly. Normally,
Meet separately in the liquor license during the licensing board hearing. So
I think then what I have to say is somewhat repetitive at the liquor license hearing. As indicated, I represent Newport Restaurant Group. Moorings LTD is a subsidiary of the Newport Restaurant Group. This matter and the plans attached to the application have been shows an 80-seat addition to the Smokehouse, which is on America's Cup Boulevard. The addition is on a contiguous lot located at 9 Sayers Wharf. The area subject to the expansion was established in 2020 as an outside COVID dining area. And it's existed since that time at that location. This expansion will be a part of the Smokehouse operation. The applicant sought permission from the zoning board of review for a variance for the parking requirements. And there was a finding by the planning board that it complied with the comprehensive community plan, and it went through the development plan review process with a positive recommendation. The zoning board also granted a special use permit to the adjacent contiguous lot, which was the parking lot in front of the moorings, which is on a separate lot. For safety purposes, they redefined the parking lot, made it more accessible to the public, and made it safer. They improved the pedestrian access. They added additional greenery on the site. They improved handicap accessibility. They enhanced the streetscape, and they improved traffic circulation on that property. This is an expanded seasonal area, as it has been the last 2 years. It's covered with a pergola. The zoning board put a restriction on it that does not allow it to be built upon with a complete structure. It will be, as I mentioned, a part of the the smokehouse's operation and not a separate operation.
Mr. Scott, thank you very much for that thorough description. It sounds like a lot of money and improvements made to this area to accommodate what was a parking lot into what I think is a higher use. In the midst of all that investment, have they made any investment on addressing the encumbrance upon the public right of way that exists on this property as well?
Well, probably it's not at this location. I see those as two different issues. I understand that there is some structure that's been there many years on that right of way. And we're certainly willing to work with the city in addressing that. We haven't shied away from it. We talked to the city about it. We're willing to continue to look at it. I see it as a separate issue than what's before you today. In my mind, it's an apple and an orange. We're not impinging or changing that use or the historic use of that part of Sayers Wharf by expanding this property. In fact, I think we've made the property, the parking lot certainly will be by the plans which have been approved, will be a great improvement both for traffic safety and pedestrian safety. That area is wide open to pedestrians. Now we made it even more accessible, both handicapped and for pedestrians to get to both Marine and to the Moorings restaurant.
Thank you. Other questions from the council?
Yes, what's the impediment on the right of way?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
What is the impediment on the right of way, or what has been stated?
The Sayers Wharf goes down the southern side of the smokehouse and the building next to it. And I can't remember what the name of we used to get sandwiches, the best sandwiches in town there at that building behind the smokehouse now. But since I can remember, there's always been a compactor or refrigeration device or structure at the end of that building. At the end of that building, there's a building that's behind the smokehouse, the front of the smokehouse has been there. That's as you go down Sayers Wharf, there's a jut out that's maybe from me to the chairs to you that has a refrigeration and a trash compactor, I believe, at that location. It's been there for years.
Even though it's been there for years, is there any other place for its location?
My clients are working with the owners of the property to look at that and try to relieve this issue. If we can't come to some other conclusion with the city, again, it's not impacting the right of way to the water. It's a right of way. So if you go down the water, if you go down to the south side of the smokehouse, you have to turn to the left and go into that parking lot to get to this, to use. You don't go to the water that way. You go to the water by going to the left as you're going toward the water.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman McCallum?
Can I just defer to the city solicitor in terms? So I recognize this was the access for right of way is a hot button topic. And I'm just wondering if city administration had come back with their final analysis on this.
Well, the analysis is that on Scott's Wharf, there's a little T at the end there. And one of the T sections, which basically doesn't, as Mr. Scott says, isn't the way down to the water, the right of way down to the water. It's still public in nature. They have an enclosure, I believe a dumpster, and there may be some other type of mechanical unit on that. So it's definitely on a public right of way. The issue is it's not part of a public right of way that the public is actually going to access. I mean, they could, if it wasn't obstructed, could they walk on it? But Yeah, they could, but they're not gonna go anywhere once they do that. So it is kind of it's obstructing a right of way that isn't public right of way to the water that the public would use.
It's a stub that doesn't go anywhere.
It's a stub, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Sure.
Council Holder?
I'm not even sure who this question is for right now, but what does the public right of way, whether it's blocked or not, have to do with them expanding their seating where they're asking for? I think it's like Mr. Scott said, these are completely two different subjects. They're asking for an expansion on the north side of the restaurant. The public, supposed public right of way that's might be obstructed is on the south side, southwest side of the building. I don't understand what the two have to do with each other. And where they're asking us to expand the bidding license for. So I don't know who can explain that or clarify.
Councilman McCallum?
I think what I understood from it was that they're, again, understanding that the right of way, okay, right, access, whether it's a stub or whatever have you, it is part of the deed, for the access for right of way. I think, you know, we have to honor in regards, I think the planning board had brought this up too, and also was in favor for passing this so long as the development itself, whether small or big, honors what's in the deed.
No, that isn't what the planning board said. The planning board at the very last moment in their deliberations indicated that they'd want to have a deeded right of way across the parking lot. And we said that that was not appropriate for safety purposes. And in fact, the zoning board, all the members of the zoning board reviewed that. And even the chairman thought it was unrealistic and abstract to require that. And they did not require it as a recommendation from the planning board. The planning board's recommendation was a deeded right of way across the parking lot.
Right, so, all right, thank you.
It had nothing to do with the stub that is.
Our planning board institutes, right, and acts, but then we had our zoning board all make an opposite decision, which now I'm referring to our city administration in terms of what is the rendered decision? Did we ever get feedback on this?
It was, first of all, whatever the planning board was doing was advisory in nature. And second, I don't want to publicly be critical of either board, but I think the way Mr. Scott has described it, the planning board did come out of well-intentioned, but came out of nowhere with adding a condition. There was basically a demand made to take a property interest from a landowner without any kind of referral to a regulation we had or policies that we had in place to do that. So I would say the zoning board was correct when they decided not to adopt that recommendation. And again, these are hardworking people. I think the planning board made a mistake in issuing that condition, and it caused a lot of confusion with the public as a result.
Thank you. Additional questions, Mr. Scott? None. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it.
Thank you. If I may.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Michael Rubin, attorney for Friends of the Waterfront. Objectors are often accused of wanting to tell a business what they can do on their own land. Here, we are not doing that. We are trying to stop the business
from doing something on the public's land that belongs to the city of Newport in trust for the public.
If I could clarify, so the area that they're looking to expand the patio into is the public's land or this?
No.
Private land?
But there's a nexus, and this is the issue that Mr. Holder brought up. And the nexus is this: you're talking about a Vic license, you're talking about a liquor license, and you're talking about an entertainment license. The more food you serve, the more trash you have to compact. The more liquor you serve, and I don't drink hardly at all, but I do know that other than red wine, liquor is served cold and with ice. The more liquor you serve, the more refrigeration you need. And the nexus is, do we want to expand the amount of food, the amount of trash, the amount of freezing, the amount of cold, when that all derives from an illegal installation? And Friends of the Waterfront is not an unreasonable organization. We'd like to see this mediated. We'd like to see the compromises and trade-offs made. Nobody really wants to see a compactor that's been there for quite a few years, or a refrigeration unit that has been there for quite a few years, suddenly ripped up from a viable business. But on the other hand, there has to be some trade-off, some working together, some mediation. Before we ever came to the city council on this, and we did not quite a year ago, and the council referred it to the administration. It was a prior council, but it's still the council. We wrote to the developer, we wrote to the owner. I then didn't receive a response. I called the owner. I received a voicemail that I would be getting a response, a communication. The next thing I know, there is a response directed directly to the city council. We had no choice but to come here before the city council and ask that it be referred to the administration. But myself and the vice president of Friends of the Waterfront contacted the administration and said, we have what we think is a reasonable proposal to resolve this. A proposal that would not call upon the developer to concede title to a right-of-way across the mooring parking lot. I don't want to get into the details because now is not the time to negotiate. I could if you wanted me to. We have had no response to any of those good faith inquiries. And would it be too much for this council to postpone this for 2 meetings? That would be 4 weeks. So that the city solicitor, you have an excellent city solicitor, Friends of the Waterfront, and the developer could try to mediate this and work something out. Now, with regard to the fact that this stub is really a stub and is, seen by some as a road to nowhere, we don't know what the future holds. To quote Robert Kennedy, quoting George Bernard Shaw, some men see the world as it is and ask why. Some see the world as it could be and ask why not. And we see a harbor walk going from Felizzoli Park all the way down to the Rochambeau Monument and along Wellington that will come to be in the future. And that stub is a link. And that's why that stub was set aside as city property in 1921, because the developers then, who were private businessmen, saw the need to link up. And there's obviously an intent to link up. And yes, maybe the planning board did act precipitously. I'll concede, for the sake of discussion at least, I'll concede that. But I think the planning board was reflecting a sense in this community that we need the links in the chain to form the harbor walk. And we shouldn't be giving up any links in the chain. Give us 4 weeks. Let's see if we can resolve this. but I don't think that an illegal compressor, a compactor, and an illegal refrigeration unit should be put to any further service until this is straightened out. Thank you. And I believe the president of Friends of the Waterfront would like to address you. We have a new president.
You could please identify yourself for the record.
Linda Stevenson, Dixon Street, President of Friends of the Waterfront. Thank you to the two counselors who did return my phone calls regarding this matter. Appreciate that. I actually disagree regarding the planning board. I think the planning board's job is to go by the land comp use plan, and in that it states there should be a harbor walk, just as that's stated in the harbor management plan and the master transportation plan. And in order for that to actually happen, we need people on the council to stand behind and make these opportunities that present themselves turned into connecting the links. So if there's an opportunity to make the harbor walk continuous, I believe it is in the city's best interest, and it's your duty to actually adhere to that and make some concrete decisions that will do that. Otherwise, they're just meaningless words in those plans. They're just, oh, we should have a harbor walk. How does that get enacted? Friends of the Waterfront has been after this for 40 years, okay? This is not something that we just, dreamed up recently. So I think the planning board was on target. They wanted to see something concrete happen. They had an opportunity because there was a developer asking for an expansion where the developer has admitted that they occupy some 500 square feet of public land. Okay, what are we asking for? We're asking for, they want to make the parking lot safe. I agree, that parking lot should be made safer. People are going to Moines, people are going to Old Port Marine, and people are going down to the harbor. It should be safe. So why can't we all get on the same page and say, let's sit down, let's make this safe. If you want to occupy 500 square feet of public property, then you need to give the public something in return for that. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask, and I ask all of you city councilors to take it to heart and understand that there are hundreds of people who are Friends of the Waterfront, hundreds and hundreds of people. And this is very important to them. I believe all of you have at some point said, oh yes, I'm in favor of public waterfront access. Here's your chance. Let's see you vote to actually make it work. Thank you so much.
Councilor McCallum.
I'd like to entertain that motion. I'd like to make a motion. Let city administration, Friends of the Waterfront, and Turner Scott sit down and at least see if there's an attempt to have some remediation. City administration will come back and share their findings.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the council?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Carlin.
Thank you, Councilor McCullough. Thank you, Councilor Napolitano. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Scott. And thank you to the Friends of the Waterfront. May I respectfully request that amendment be offered in such a manner, and we may have to pause for a moment or two and seek advice from our city solicitor, so as not to interfere with any potential litigation brought by the applicants. We need to make very clear that the reason we are asking for a delay has only to do with, as Councilor Holger said, the question that is directly before us, which is the question of whether to permit an expansion of tables and chairs into what is now the mooring parking lot. No doubt a good attorney will take this, and Mr. Scott is a good attorney, a very good attorney. We'll take this to court and suggest that we are veering off what we should, as Councilor Holder says, and as I agree with, what we should be paying attention to regarding the application. And that is to say the merits of the application itself. I'll pause and ask if the solicitor wants to comment on what I just said.
Chris, are we gonna get sued?
Look, You can, listen, yes, can applicants get upset that they demand to be heard at this time, that the two issues aren't connected? Yeah, you could. But if you continue this to the next council meeting or a council meeting after that, I don't think that the city would be facing any degree of liability for that action.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate your motion. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the thing I need to clarify is these tables and chairs would be on private property. Right. The refrigeration unit is what's blocking the access here. Correct?
Right.
So the refrigeration unit is going to be staying there whether or not the tables and chairs are going to be there anyway.
The issue of them, the property owner being on the right of way can be addressed at any time, irrespective of whether this relief is granted.
Right. So these tables and chairs really have nothing to do with the refrigeration unit that is sitting there, except that there might put some ice in there for wine.
Well, I mean, I respect Mr. Rubin's argument about, that. I wouldn't say that he's, that's far-fetched or anything, but no, I, as a general matter, I don't think the issues are really tied. We can always address that access issue. They cannot get ownership of that. They do not take it by adverse possession. It's impossible to do that. So we could address that at any time.
What we need to address is the refrigeration unit and not these tables that would be going down.
No, we need to address what's on the Scotts Wharf right away, the stub, which I believe is it's an enclosure, it's a dumpster, it's a pad, and it may have some type of refrigeration.
Those are the pieces of equipment that are blocking this right of way. It wouldn't be these tables that are on private property.
Correct. I mean, when you say blocking the right of way, preventing access onto that stub.
Okay, thank you.
I personally view these as two separate issues, but I think they're both very, there's an overtone here of we should be holding this victualling license hostage until, the developer and the property owner corrects a true issue, right? A true issue of equipment on public land. I see this as exclusive issues. Just a bit of history, if I could request, is there any reason why the city hasn't addressed this in the past? And this is the right of way city land issue, not
Correct.
the table.
No, Mr. Rubin has contacted my office, has been in touch, has asked for the city to take action. He has asked for, as he has on other rights of way issues, asked my office to act at times as a mediator. We just have not gotten to this issue. Sometimes these right of ways, there's priorities, and since it's blocking this stub, and I know people think this is very important, and is, but in terms of blocking this stub compared to blocking such as Spring Wharf, blocking the actual right of way down to the water, that's different. And so we've spent time on that. We've also spent some time with Mr. Rubin and his clients on other
Thank you, Mr.
matters.
So, my feedback to Mr. Rubin on this, you have a legitimate issue. And certainly for this counselor, I would pay attention to that issue within our administration and push for a resolution. The private equipment on city land, that's real, it's cut and dry. But I'm also not a believer in trying to marry the issues and hold a separate issue hostage And so my personal position on this, I would certainly vote to approve the victualling license, but I would encourage further discussion with the city because I would like to learn more about this. And I certainly, as an individual counselor, would be voting to find ways to address this cutoff of right of way in some fashion.
Mr. Chair, I think I think Mr. Aramli's comments are spot on. Thank you.
Councilman McKellar?
I don't understand why we couldn't take a pause on this issue. I think that we're making a determinant for future development that's going to also impact our residents and visitors alike in regards to access. Like, with all due respect, there is no need to push this as much as it is. I'm willing to say, okay, if you're not willing to entertain to hold it for a month, what about next council meeting? 2 weeks. What is the big deal?
Is that a reasonable timeline to, you think, here's what strikes me, right? I don't think these two parties sound like they're terribly far apart,
That's right.
right? And it sounds like all parties seem willing to come to the table and negotiate on this. Mr. Vian, is 2 weeks a reasonable timeline to reach a resolution on something like this?
I don't know about a resolution, but getting together and talking about it, I mean, certainly there will be no problem with that. They're both very professional and we'll have discussions, we'll have meaningful discussions. Whether it will resolve in 2 weeks, I'm not sure.
Well, since all three parties, would it be possible, Mr. Scott, are you able to meet in 2 weeks? Mr. Rubin, are you able to meet in 2 weeks?
Anytime, any place, anywhere with anybody.
Great. 2 hours.
Including Turner?
I can certainly meet. The president of the Friends of the Waterfront came up here and said that what they wanted was a connection. And if that's what if they walk in and say, we have to have a connection across your parking lot, we don't need to talk because we're not going to give them a connection against the car parking lot. But that's what she stated. And she also,
whether you would have 2 weeks. Are you able?
I'm really willing and able, and my client and I are really willing and able to talk about it. No question about it.
Okay, so 2 weeks sounds doable. So can this council just oblige and just hold off the vittling license and, hold off our vittling license for now and just come back in 2 weeks?
Mr. Chairman.
We're going to defer to first Councilor Napolitano and then our third ward councilor.
This issue has been ongoing for a long time and probably should have been addressed before this. This is certainly leverage for somebody to come in and put up 80 seats, and I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem with not being able to resolve this issue that has been around for a long time, and 2 weeks is not going to kill anybody.
Yeah. Sure. So quickly to Councilor Carlin, unless you'd like to yield to.
Yield to my colleague, Council Holder.
Council Holder.
Thank you. I understand the points you're making. My point is, as a council, what is in front of us is an expansion of a certain area that has nothing to do with the supposed blocking of a public walkway, walkthrough, where do you want to put it? I'm afraid we keep getting off subject and going on other things. They'll never come to an agreement on this. It's not going to happen. This has been going on for years, and this goes on in other places in the city as well. We are here on a vittling license expansion in a private lot that has nothing to do with what else has been brought up. So I just don't want to set a bad precedent and go down a slippery slope where we're going off track on other things. So just please be careful about that.
Mr. Chair, I agree with everyone here. And, but I mean, eventually, the rubber's gonna have to hit the road on this, and whether or not they come to an agreement in 2 weeks or not, we're gonna have to vote on this. So I say, let's continue it for 2 weeks, but then if they come to agreement, great. If they don't, we're still gonna have to vote on it, and we're gonna have to bite the bullet. So
That sounds
I
good.
just-
There's a motion on the table. It's been seconded. All those in favor of the amendment?
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry, Council McCollum, sorry about that.
No, please don't be. It's been a long night and you're doing a great job as always. Can you please tell me what the motion is?
Motion is to continue this item for 2 weeks until our next council meeting in order to afford the parties the opportunity to at least initially meet and discuss this. I'll make it clear that the expectation here is that they meet to have substantive discussions on this matter, not necessarily reach full resolution, but to get this in motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, what matter?
The matter being the current encroachment on the public right of way that exists at the rear of the building.
I would strongly suggest to my colleagues, and I respect my mayor and attorney, I respect our city solicitor, I respect everybody else. Originally, the proposed amendment was made by my colleague, Councilor McCall. May I ask that I will support, that you offer a clean amendment, simply continuing this item for 2 weeks with no other language attached to that.
No problem.
Thank you, Counselor.
To table this item.
No.
I'm sorry. I can't say
Continue.
Okay. I move to continue this item for 2 weeks.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. With one nay vote.
We'll continue that.
Yes, that's a reasonable assumption. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
you.
entertainment light. Is on there too.
Yes.
And if I, I know I should probably just shut up because you've already, decided, I know not to argue after the judge's ruled. But I just want to clarify one thing.
Mr. Rubin, I appreciate that. We're gonna have to move forward on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to approve a street cafe, new Fitzsilos, LLC, doing business as a corner cafe, 110 Broadway, to add 6 tables and 20 seats. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to item D.
Yes, motion to approve the cafe sidewalk cafe license renewals, Broadway Tavern, doing business as Tavern on Broadway, 1618 Broadway. Hummingbird, LLC, doing business as Hummingbird, A Taste of the Caribbean, 104 Broadway, and The Parlor LLC, doing business as Parlor and Kitchen, 200 Broadway. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Are there any comments, or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Motion to approve the annual entertainment license renewals, Class A indoor, Class B outdoor. Is there something on here about the smokehouse? I'm just curious.
Is there an entertainment license associated with it?
Yes, there's an entertainment license. Should we continue?
I'm fine approving it.
Okay, motion to approve the annual entertainment license renewals. Do I have a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. There are no appointments, boards and commissions, right? Any council liaison updates?
Mr. Chair, just want to mention that the school committee, council liaison committee came to would like to invite council to a public meeting on May 25th at Rogers to discuss the new Rogers building and to discuss some activities that are happening, very positive activities that are happening at the NACTech building. I think it's at 5:30. I'm going to have to, we'll have to confirm that, but I'm hoping that we can all attend that. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, we've already addressed the resolutions for the evening, which brings us to item number 17, ordinance.
Motion to amend section 10.24.010 entitled Parking Prohibited at All Times to add Nzenga Avenue. This is a second reading.
Second.
Comments from the council to begin. And we'll give you another opportunity at the end to speak as well, but just if anybody wants to say anything to start. Councilman Calhoun, did you?
Sure. Yes. Um, last week, I was a bit surprised that this council would sort of, I thought we had made a decision that we were going to defer to city administration to come back with a recommendation. And I was actually quite surprised that we just decided as a council, as a body, to just ban it altogether, which, I didn't think that that made any sense, understanding again, like it's really hard to park. I think about my constituents on the north end and again, access to the waterfront. 95% of the north end is occupied by military base. There's no way. So you have to travel more south during the line. And I just think about the fact that like Isnaga is pretty essential for the public, and I don't support having to obstruct this in its full entirety and make it private.
Additional comments from the council before we open up to the public for comment?
I have one comment.
Yes, Council Holder.
I understand that point of view. Obviously, I got a lot of emails and phone calls about it. But at the same time, there are other streets in that neighborhood that do not allow parking, that are public streets. So why is this one street different than those? So if we allow it on this street, we should allow it on all the other streets.
It's a good point that I think about, because I think that we are having sort of a problem in terms of privatizing parking spaces in publicly, like the city of Newport owns these properties. And I'm becoming more and more worried that again, these access points are being limited.
But it is that street is not an access point to the water either. It's a place to park where you can walk to other places.
Yeah.
And you get to be also,
Why shouldn't people be able to?
Well, I just don't want people to be confused as that being a water access point at like Ledge Road is or something like that. That's all. I just want to make that distinction. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the public would like to speak on this item. Would anyone like to begin? Ms. McCarthy, if you please identify yourself for the record.
Hi there, my name is Alepi McCarthy. I live at 72 Warner Street in this beautiful city. I'm going to read this just because I'm not sure that all of the council members received it today. I've had a lot of issues emailing you all. I was out of the country and I was in Portsmouth, and for some reason they bounce back a lot, which I'll deal with the city later. So what I wrote to you today was, please do not vote in favor of a complete parking ban on Yasnaga Avenue. Last month's meeting gave us the info from our fire marshal that parking on one side of Yasnaga Avenue leaves room for emergency vehicles to respond. I understand that the property owners asking for this change are inconvenienced by construction vehicles. I tried attaching recent pictures to show my understanding of their plight, but they kept bouncing back. The number of times my driveway on Warner Street has been blocked, I cannot count. And as for having to wait on the side or back up because of oncoming cars is how we drive on most of our two-way streets in this town. When the person can't get out of the driveway, Councilperson Napolitano suggested 2 meetings ago that this is an enforcement issue. I cannot find info on whether the majority of the property owners on Yasnaga have ever applied for sticker parking on their street. That's the easiest and first step when dealing with parking issues in our city. Yasnaga is a public street. I've been parking there and enjoying the trees and walking to that lovely park for many decades, and I look forward to shaded parking and lovely walks in the neighborhood for years to come. So that's what I wrote to you today. And if I might just add that it's not a water access Mr. Holder, that it isn't a water access. And the fact that it isn't access to the water doesn't mean that it shouldn't be there for me to park and walk around. Again,
That's a question.
I beg your pardon?
Question.
Of course, may I?
So if you drive down there and Robinsky's full, his Naga is full, then where do you go?
Well, in the summer, I'm on my bike, so I don't park anywhere down there. In the fall and in the winter, there's plenty of places, there's plenty of room for me to park. And I assumed in the last meeting that I didn't make, that you had chosen to have parking on one side of the street, which makes perfect sense to me. And then to find out this morning that this is the second reading for both sides being closed was a real shock to me. And again, I can't find any documentation that they've ever even asked to have sticker parking there. Of course, they don't want their street filled with cars. I mean, I don't want a street filled with cars, but there you go. Live here, get used to it. That street is not busy 365 days a year as most of the downtown streets are. This is an issue, I believe, that was brought up because of the construction going on. I was somewhat yelled at today from a guy in a truck as I was leaving Yasnaga, having measured the street, because he said he couldn't get by. And I said, well, just wait a minute. And I just went around. So the construction guys are having a hard time with it. The Bryces are having a hard time. They're all having a hard time, but making it so I can't park there in November and walk to the beach is unreasonable, I think. That's me. Good luck. Please don't vote for that.
Thank you, Lefty.
Thank you.
Next. If you could, please identify yourself.
Ryan Patrick Kelly, Poplar Street. First, I want to just start by thanking everyone in the council for all of my going through and reading all of the emails and the phone calls. And I also just want to say too that I was recently reminded by someone that there's a fine line sometimes between advocacy and what can appear as antagonistic. And that was a really good reminder to myself, because I'm not here to be antagonistic. I'm really just trying to advocate on behalf of what I think is right. And I don't know the Bryces, and you seem like lovely people, and I'm, where?
My driveway.
No, I wasn't at Yasnaga today.
Guys, if you could just please.
Anyway, so the olive branch I was trying to extend, we can table that or continue that. But the argument's already been sort of put out there. I think, looking back at satellite imagery from 2014, there's been cars there. It's been going on for a really long time. It's interesting coming at the end of the meeting tonight. There's been a lot of interesting phrases like adverse possession, private equipment on public land. Councilor Carlin even brought up the firework issue because he didn't think that it was the process that is normally followed for that. And I would like to apply all of that to this example, where this doesn't feel like it's the normal process, that we're skirting the ITC, skirting the testimony of the fire chief. I'd also just ask, what is that street receiving taxpayer services? And if it is, and you're removing taxpayer access, how do you reconcile that as a council? And if we're going to do it here, where else are we going to do it? So I just, everything else has been an email. Does the council, by this is a question, is there a count of how many people have been pro or against this in terms of usually, with this legislation, offices will keep counts of how many citizens have wrote in, and I'm wondering if there's a public count that you guys can share.
I don't believe that there is. And the challenge there, right, is we all receive correspondence, and yet we are limited by public open meetings law as to what we can discuss not being in a public forum.
Okay.
And the council currently, as we heard earlier, does not have any core central staff that's able to coordinate that type of information without breaching open meetings law.
Okay.
So we don't have a count.
And just to close, for the record, the last time I was on Yasnaga, right hand to God, was last night at 7:30 p.m. I was not on Yasnaga today. So.
And I would also just, in helpful points, appreciate your testimony, but I would say that The way this council has been leaning and working towards is not necessarily responding to where we get the most emails from or the loudest voice from, but trying to listen to what those voices are actually saying to discern out what we think the best position is consistent with the city's policies.
No, I appreciate that. And similar to the polling that was done in the room, I know it's not everything, but you know, it is a metric that I think that should be considered. And honestly, the argument stands. It feels like it's city property, adverse possession. There's fencing up on Isnaga that I don't know who put that there and whose property that's on. These are interesting things that were all discussed tonight, and they really apply to this topic. So thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Amy.
Hi, Amy Machado, Child Burdick Ave. I sent you all a letter. I do park on that street. I live in the North End, but it's a great place to park, especially when I'm running certain loops in town. Honestly, as a Newport taxpayer and a resident, the optics of this look terrible. Watching these gentlemen that have probably all left, fighting for their lives and livelihood to have a petty cab license, salt of the earth, small business owners, and then, you know, some of them getting rejected, and then kind of like, now we're going to give basically a private driveway to the residents between Miramar and Clarendon Court. It just looks gross. And the fact that even the name of the street is named after a person who enslaved people, who used to own a sugar plantation. The optics of it are terrible. I park on that street. I would appreciate for you to keep it open. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments from the public? Yes, Ms.
My name is Elena Kissel, and I live in the neighborhood, not right next to, but in the neighborhood of Yaganza. And I walk there frequently. And I just wanted to know from the council, what other streets going east from Bellevue allow parking on either one or both sides? Because my observation is none of those streets allow public parking there. And I'm just curious as to whether that is the case.
Webster for one.
Webster.
Webster is a dead end street and allows parking on one side right near
Both sides, yeah.
and ledge.
Yeah, so I'm not going from east from Bellevue, but. And are those viable parking areas, Ledge Road, to access the east end of Boys Beach? Because I understand that a lot of people want to park and go to the beach, and we all should have access to the beach. My observation is that people who are Newport residents have access to parking at Ravinsky Park, and then Ledge Road, I gather that you need a permit for that also, a parking permit.
If there's resident sticker on Rivers. I don't.
You know what you have to do?
There is, I think there is, yeah.
You're on.
For Ravinsky, you need the permit. I don't know if you do in Ledge Road, but my point is basically that agreeing that there should be beach access, but wondering whether given the Ravinsky parking and access on Ledge Road, whether that would satisfy that people are looking for.
I don't think that it does satisfy the need. Mr. Chair, I just want to say, I would love to be able to support this. In all honesty, it would be so easy to say, yeah, you know what, let's just do this. I have a real problem and a philosophical issue with a city that plows a street, maintains a street. And somebody said to me, well, what do you care about 5 cars on the street parked? I don't care about 2 cars on the street. I think that there should be parking on one side of the street. I believe the Bryce should be able to get out of their driveway. I believe that they should be afforded that convenience. I understand, but there is a give and take in this town on almost every street that people have to negotiate, whether that is Warner Street or practically any street. And are we going to take every dead end street and make them no parking on both sides? I just can't reconcile that. And as I said, you know, I sympathize with Mr. Carlin, being a former ward counselor. I understand what it's like to have to help a constituent. I understand that, but I am having a real problem with this philosophically. And I would like to make an amendment to have resident sticker parking only on that street. I think it's what's fair to the residents. It would cut down the parking on that street to not allow in the summertime out-of-state cars. I think it's the fair way to go. And also at the last meeting, Mayor Kamsi Borbong said, well, how about if we shorten the distance of the parking? So I think those are all reasonable suggestions. And I think that, as I said, there is a give and take in this town when it comes to just about every area. And people are inconvenienced from time to time, and that's just the way it goes. So I'm sorry, I can't support this. I would love to support this. I have great respect for Councilor Carlin, I really do. And I'm sure that 99% of the other times that I will agree with him, but I just can't agree with this one.
Additional comments from the public before we jump back?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilor Carlin.
briefly. It's a great pleasure to see you, Ms. Kissel, and always is. Thank you. I didn't want the night to go by without saying that.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Price.
It's late and it's hot. Mark Price, it's late and it's hot, and I'm not going to be wordy, but I want to make a couple of points that are important. One is, it is a dead end. It is a dead end that goes nowhere. It does not have access to the ocean, or Cliffwalk, or any place else. It goes to my house and only my house. I am the only one who lives on Isnaga Avenue. I am not a slave owner.
My point, Mr. Bryce, but there are people who park there in order to go to Rejects Beach.
I understand that.
To be able to do that.
Forgive me, I didn't interrupt you. From the time the automobile was invented, there's been no parking on Isnaga Avenue. I don't care how far back you go, it has always been considered a private road until recently when suddenly the city decides it's not. And that is the truth. That's when I bought my property in 1995, there was 2 signs there that said no private road, no trespass. They were on both sides of Isnaga Avenue, and they stayed there until 2011 when Klein Rand sold his property. He took his signs with him, and all of a sudden it became a public road. And I've been fighting about that ever since. All I'm asking for is for no parking. I'm not asking for it to be closed, to make it a private road. I'm asking for there to be no parking. I did have a fire at my house. It was March 26, 2016. March 26, 2016. Firemen did a spectacular job keeping me from losing my house. But they had a terrible time trying to get up Isnaga Avenue and around the corner to get to my house. And it took them a long time. And that's with nobody parking there in March. You got parking on one side. The road is 17 to 18 feet wide, some places as much as 20. You have one car or one truck parked there, like an F-150. An F-150 is almost 8 feet wide. A fire truck is 10 feet wide. You can squeeze by, but you can't back out. You can't, and let me ask you this. If someone had been hurt in that fire, and they needed an ambulance, and the ambulance got there first, and the fire truck comes up behind them, who are they going to save? They're going to save the person in the ambulance, or they're going to save my house from burning down because the fire truck has to back all the way out to Bellevue Avenue to let that ambulance out. There is no 2 ways. Romansky Avenue is 30 feet wide. It has parking by residents only seasonally on the north side. There is probably 40 spaces there. The woman who testified earlier testified about riding her bike down in the summertime. That doesn't involve parking on Isnaga Avenue. She drives her car down in the fall. There's a lot of spaces on Romansky Avenue. There's a ton of spaces there. The only time there isn't any space there is in the summertime when there's 1,000 cars coming down Bellevue Avenue. And what they do is they come down Bellevue Avenue, they make a left-hand turn into Isnaga Avenue, which is a dead end, and they go up to the top and they have to make a U-turn. They have to come back out. And while I'm waiting to get out of my driveway, that car's making a U-turn. Another car comes up. Now, we're not talking about occasional traffic. We're talking about traffic all day long. June, July, August, and September. And I got to wait for that person to go up, and then that person's got to back out. The person who's turning around has to come down. Now, that person comes back up. He realizes he's got to turn around, so he turns around and comes back down. It goes like that all day long. Mr. Kelly has a great description of it. It's called vehicular Tetris. Tetris is a game. I don't play with a game. I have to react. That is my reality day in and day out. I've lived there for 27 years. I never had a problem with that house. Never had a problem with this Naga until the last 4 or 5 years when suddenly everybody wants to park there. Now, we can dispute, and I believe, Mr. Beyond knows that how I feel about this. I believe it is a private road. And I believe it's always been a private road. And there'll be a petition from one of the best lawyers and zoning lawyers in the state that says that.
Does the city plow your road?
The city has never plowed my road until recently. We just repaved Isnaga Avenue at my expense. Miramar, Planning Court, and I paved that road at my expense. So whether it is a private road or not, I don't care about that. I care about being able to get on my driveway. That's a simple request. I care about that. I can't do that almost all summer long without having to wait for car after car after car, making that left-hand turn. This is not like other places in the city. This is Bellevue Avenue in July. With hundreds, if not 1,000 cars that get on there every single day.
To compromise and just have residents.
Residential parking will still have exactly the same problem. You have a line of cars there, but the resident parking, believe me when I say this, it will be a line from the Bellevue Avenue all the way up to the top of Isnaga Avenue with cars. Whether they're local cars or foreign cars, they're still blocking my ability to get in and out.
What if we were to cut down from 320 feet to 200 feet?
I try to think about how that would work. I can't see how it would work. I respectfully don't believe that it would work in any way, shape, or form. No matter where you put it, it's going to be a problem. The fire truck, believe me when I say this, they can't make the turn. My home's at the end. They can't make that turn. If a car anywhere near there, they can't make that turn. And they certainly can't back out. And that's the problem. I respectfully request. I mean, I do. And I understand people have lots of needs in this city, and we have a lot of time. We spend a lot of time in this world, and I appreciate all the effort. I really do. But I respectfully request that it simply be no parking, which is the way it's been for like 100 years. It's just going back to what it was before suddenly somebody took some signs down. And it's when I bought my property, and people have to appreciate, I bought my property, it was private. There was no parking there. And it has been that way for the first 20 years I had it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Councilor Romley, your mic is off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I drove Zinga Avenue for the second time today. And I think with the number of us taking drives up and down there to take a look, we probably should have a barbecue on the shoulder or something just to hang out. You know, the initial reading of banning parking on both sides of the street was passed with a fractured council, 4-3 on the first reading. And I was one of the ones in favor. And Mr. Bryce, I truly believe you deserve and need relief from the situation that you had. You know, after looking at the street a second time today and thinking about, now I do wholly reject the ITC's recommendation, by the way. I do think in looking at it, my personal judgment as an engineer, cars all the way along one side of Yazinga is unmanageable. The street is unique in that it does not have other driveways on it. So typically on congested streets where there's parking and opposing cars would have trouble clearing each other, you know, there's various homes, driveways, or other openings. There's breaks in the lines of cars where two opposing vehicles, somebody can scooch over, right, and let the other guy pass. Yazinga does not have that. There is no break. And so I remain wholly opposed to allowing full parking along the north side of Yazinga. And my vote is not changing. So I do believe Mr. Carlin knows his ward quite well, and I trust his judgment, but I did want to offer a request to Mr. Carlin to consider potentially revising the ordinance change to allow some small section of parking, resident parking only. I would even say less than 40% of the street that could be strategically placed so that just as in other congested streets, you know, there's some parking allowed resident only, but there's room for opposing cars to scoot over. I made this request, it's not changing my vote. So I've already voted on this ordinance. My opinion hasn't changed. But I do believe this compromise would allow a supermajority of the council to vote yes on this. And I do believe the best decisions that come out of this city are supermajorities of the council where nearly everybody is in agreement versus a fractured 4-3. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilor Collin, would you care to address that?
I would like to thank my colleague for his kind words about me. The proposed ordinance change was passed 4-2 at the last council hearing. There is an appropriate second reading before us. There is a motion to adopt. There is a second. And I call the question, Mr. Chairman.
Any additional comments or questions from the council? Hearing none, we're going to do a roll call vote on this one.
Councilman Napolitano.
The question on the floor is.
I'm sorry.
It's
to support the. Yes.
Yes.
Second reading.
Second reading.
Pass on second reading.
Yes.
That was May.
Yes.
Council. Yay, sorry.
I think she said that. So did you?
No.
We did not say nay.
Okay.
And parking in the street.
Cars.
Correct.
Council Holder,
Yes.
Council Carlin,
Yes.
Mayor, Council Waterman,
No.
Councilor Segley, Councilor Rami,
Yes.
Councilor McCalla.
Nay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody who has testified on this, and thank you to my colleagues.
Moving on to item number 18. This is communication from the city manager, approval of a contract for engineering services. For the Friday Park dock replacements. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is carried. Before we adjourn, two additional pieces of business. First, there will be a much more thorough opportunity to have this conversation and recognition, but it is now public that Manager Joe Nicholson has decided to step down from his role as city manager. And so effective September, or you've noted your intent to do so?
September 15th.
Right. And so
Thank you very much.
we would be remiss if we did not recognize you for all of your service and look forward to a future opportunity to celebrate. Celebration. There are a lot of things we could all be choosing to do on an important day for our lives, and David Carlin has chosen to spend his birthday with this city council on a particularly long meeting night, advocating very effectively for his constituents, advocating, I think, for common sense approaches. And so we just wanted to wish you a happy birthday, Councilor Carlin.
Happy birthday.
Motion to adjourn as council and convene as Board of License Commissioners. Motion to approve the consent calendar in its entirety.
Second.
Yeah.
No, then we go to the license and permit. So, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Motion to continue the application for the mooring, doing business at Smokehouse Cafe for 2 weeks for the next council meeting.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion to adjourn.